Welcome to the Pet Business Club. This is a podcast and community for early stage founders in the pet space who are deep in the weeds and are supporting each other through this messy middle. And today we have Mike Zung, the CEO and founder of Bloomist, which is an e-commerce and please let me know if I'm misrepresenting your site. It's beautiful. It looks like where it's like an e-commerce website where you can buy beautiful home decor that are functional.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elsa. I'm so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this for ages. Just a little bit more on my background. So Mike Zung started a company called Bloomist. Our motto is to make nature home, and the goal is to really bring nature into your home. We started in 2018 and really stemmed from this concept of we didn't see anybody out there, honestly, that was really into curating a home that where everything had a story to tell. So whether it be from the earth or from the wood or from the recycled materials made by artisans, made by hand. Uh, we didn't see that curated in a certain way anywhere else on the market. So kind of one of our first things was we developed an upcycled and recycled fake flower. So we call it EcoFo. We have the trademark on EcoFo, but it's all made from upcycled and recycled polyethylene or biomass plastic that came from like sugarcane, etc. So it's a little elevated, but we also made it from folks that have been making these kinds of flowers for like 40 years. So the artistry involved in it was also something really, really important to us. So try and make it as realistic as possible, modeled on real flowers in the wild. So if there's a bug thing or if there's a little flaw in one of the petals, we have those. So kind of fair warning, I guess, because some people actually complain that it looks too real. But for sure. And we've always also aimed to be unique. So we do have live plants on the site, but they are kokidama. So they're like these mini bonsai trees that come from Japan that are wrapped in a moss ball that are kind of uniquely curated. But yeah, we have a ficus, but it's like a little mini ficus. Yeah, we have a monstera, but it's like a little mini monstera. And we have one called a rattlesnake plant, and we have others in that area that I think are really, really unique to the market. And then we have our own line of planters that we've developed. We also have these things called flower frogs. So before the days of styrofoam, where you stick the flowers in these styrofoam things, the floral companies would give you a block where you had these holes in it, and you just stick it in, and they called it a frog for whatever reason. And so we've developed kind of a line of those that you can kind of develop your own little Ikebana vignette, which is always really super fun. So yeah, I think that kind of describes our business and our line. We just launched a whole new line of rugs to our website as well. All of them are handmade, and all of them kind of fit the palette that we're looking for. It's a little bit of a minimalistic Scandinavian slash Japanese feel that we've tried to achieve. Yeah, and then we source from 90 different artisans. But yeah, I think that's a sort of a general thing on our site. But in terms of the development of it from 2018, um, we launched before the pandemic, and 2019 was a pretty strong year. But 2020 was, it really escalated. That's when everybody was decking out their homes and putting everything in there. And this word I hadn't heard of prior to. We've all heard of a selfie, but then people started developing a shelfie. And people started like being super conscious, and still they are today, right? Of like what's behind them.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a window, there's people walking by. But it's now like, okay, let's put things behind us that kind of identify who we are. And people were like putting certain books and certain orders on their shelf. Okay, you have Atlas Shrugged, and you have Dune, and you have, like, what
Yeah.
does that say about you? You know what I mean? So we wanted to accent that with certain pieces that we had. We wanted to teach people how to do it. So content became kind of an important element of what we did, and teach people how to use those things. And we had things that were like, a Tunisian clay bead that was perfect for the shelfie. That was that the story behind that is it's made in northern Tunisia, and a tribe that mothers use the beads to teach their daughters how to make these clay items. And our one of my co-founders and creative director, I mean, she worked with Aid to Artisans, which was a State Department program to help these folks learn how to export and learn how to sell. So almost like teach somebody how to fish rather than just give them fish. So that was pretty beautiful. And Yeah, so the pandemic was strong, super strong. um, but then we certainly hit a ton of challenges after that. Starting with just coming out of the pandemic was a bad thing in some ways for us, just because the interest rates shot up, home sales plummeted, which I know it sounds crazy, but home decor depends on home sales. So that kind of hit us. Um, but then people spending money on events and travel because they had been cooped up for the last 2 years kind of hit us. But then we were definitely slammed. I'm sure you might have others on your podcast and heard this before if you're in this space at all. But that 14.5 thing really hit us hard. So what I mean by that, if you're not familiar, is iOS 14.5 is the one that prompted you to ask apps to track when you download them, which included the Facebook app in particular. And basically, Facebook was effed, pretty badly. And I think Facebook, of course, is still recovering from it. And the entire direct to consumer business is still recovering from it or finding other ways. And it's slowly crept back as we find other ways to identify potential customers. But the return on investment from Facebook went from 2.5, spend $1, get 2.5 revenue back, to $1, get $1 back.
Mm.
And that, now it's finally creeping back up. But that hit us hard. So I know prepping for this podcast, you had asked, what are some challenges that we had gone through, and I would say those are part of it. But then we had a private investor to help us get going, and with any direct to consumer, it was similar. I mean, how do we get from 0 to 10 million as quickly as possible? Yes, we'll lose marketing money. We'll lose money mainly attributable to spending it on marketing to acquire customers along the way, and these customers would have a certain lifetime value, and so therefore we would make it back in the longer run. And so we got like almost halfway there, so we got from 0 to about a $4 million run rate. But then things started slowing down, and this family had other things to attend to, if you will, and really literally decided to close us down in May of 2022.
Oh, wow.
So that literally the site was shut for months, with big, huge thanks for your business, thanks for your support. We're gone. And behind the scenes, I was just negotiating with them to figure out a way to buy it. So I was able to pull the funds together. And in August of 2022, we came to an agreement, and I relaunched the site. And ever since then, it's been profitable. And yeah, I mean, the revenue suffered a bit just because I went from spending a ton on marketing to literally almost nothing when we first started. Slowly I've built that back up. But it's interesting to pivot from being a how do I get from 0 to 10 million as fast as possible and maybe lose, good chunk of money along the way to, okay, now I'm running a profitable business. It's quite the adjustment, to really kind of have that discipline. And I'd almost recommend almost any company to really, losing money is, if you have the luxury to lose money, is almost dangerous in a way, because like
Yeah.
how much money can you lose? What's the appropriate amount to lose? So it's easier just to say I won't lose money, and therefore I have that discipline of, okay, it's only going to be, zero loss. But I know for your listeners who might just be starting out, it's just a tough question because there's no way you can make money from, I mean, God bless you if you can, but it's very challenging, of course, to make money from day one, especially enough money
Yeah.
to make your venture go to the extent that can pay for yourself, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that
I
is.
guess I'll pause there, but I can let you. Yeah,
I love that introduction,
yeah,
and it's impressive that you're able to go kind of like the other way around, going from a venture-backed business,
right.
that didn't have those constraints to, okay, now I have to bootstrap and now I have to be profitable. So kudos to you. And I think that makes this conversation even more interesting because there's so much that, I and the community can learn. So for example, my business, Goodnight Fetcher, it's bootstrapping. And a lot of our podcast guests, a lot of our podcast listeners are also bootstrapping their own D2C business. So this is
Mm-hmm.
the perfect context. So can we do a bit of comparison? I want to learn more about, okay, what were your unit economics like pre-transition, and what does it look like now?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is our gross profit has not changed from almost the second we started to even today, in terms of the margin that we achieve. I mean, we've always had an angle to be elevated, and the prices we're able to charge allows us to have anywhere from a 60 to 80% gross margin, right? Um, I think the 80 percenters really come in more so when it's your own proprietary designs. I mean, you're rewarded for that in a sense. So yeah, I mean, we work with an artisan group, in Honduras, or an artisan group in India, to produce our own designs that I continue to sell. Okay. And those are really the strongest sellers. And you kind of need, I know that sounds almost gross, like an 80% margin, but I mean, if you're going to go wholesale and you're thinking about wholesale, and in fact, that's one area that I launched after we never did wholesale prior. But I went on to FAIR, FAIRE, in November, right after I relaunched. And I'm like, shit, like, can I say shit? You can edit out. I mean, like, how do I really make this work? What's another channel for me? And then I found Fair, FAIRE, this wholesale site, and it's really helped. But obviously, to sell wholesale, you need to sell it at 50% in order for your retail partners to make their own money. So while I do sell my items for 80% margins on my own site, I sell it to them for 50% off of that, and so I'm only making theoretically 30% on gross. Um, but having said that, I mean, even a cosmetics company that makes 90% still only might even lose money. It's just you need to be able to market it,
Yeah.
and that marketing cost
Mm.
is pretty exorbitant at the very beginning. I mean, what you want to do is be able to get to a point where you have 50,000 customers and they're telling all of their friends. And so you can start to recognize some of that. And that makes a much, much more healthy business. But still, at the very beginning, even if you have 90% margins, you're going to have to, um, market it quite extensively. Um, and when I talk about 60 to 80%, I'm talking about the cost of your goods.
Landed costs.
So landed cost of your goods. So you still have to ship it out. You still have to fulfill it. You still have to do the marketing. That doesn't count the Shopify costs or the tech costs or any of those things. So even at 60 to 80% gross, I mean, you're still lucky to break even on those types of landed cost margins. Um, yeah. So I think those are the challenges. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. So it sounds yeah, so it sounds like landed cost, gets you at 60 to 80 gross. And we in our last conversation we used to talk briefly about fulfillment, right? And we talked about how fulfillment roughly, takes probably 30% of revenue. Would you say that's fair and that was true for you?
Yeah, I mean that's the one variable that you really, really have to kind of keep an eye on and work on, because I am at 30-ish. I mean, I really, I mean that's where your savings are in some ways. I mean, if you can get it down to 25, if you can figure out ways. I our greenhouse for our plants is in St. Louis, and like the guy can ship from literally to anywhere in the 48, and it's the same amount of money. It's like weird. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
Seattle, $10.92. Florida, $10.92. It's like, all right.
yeah,
And it gets there every 2 days to anywhere in the US. So I'm not saying everybody should move to St. Louis, but uh, you know, I mean, one of the challenges for us is sometimes we sell like these either baskets or large planters, that I mean, in UPS land, if you go over this sort of 16-inch box, it suddenly becomes this huge thing. I mean, I guess it's like a human being can carry that.
yeah,
And then once it gets to 18 by 18, I mean, we've all moved before. I'm sure
yeah.
you know what an 18-inch box is. And I guess it's hard for somebody to carry that. And so, it's just sort of an escalation. It literally goes from like 16, $18 to 32, to ship something, with those kind of dimensions. And it doesn't necessarily reflect in the price. I mean, some of our items, I mean, you ship jewel. I always love the jewelry people who are
Oh,
shipping,
amazing.
you
I
know,
love it.
thirteen
Oh my
hundred
God.
dollar things for
Yeah.
$5. I mean, what?
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ham it, $2.
I know, but it's something to really consider when you're looking at any launch or any startup, and what it's just a function of it, and if you want to be profitable and how you want to be profitable. I mean, like you said, you have a lot of listeners, and they're thinking about their business and thinking about their product lines and thinking about things like using TikTok or using live shopping in some capacity to sell their products. And if you want it to be sort of an impulse buy where somebody doesn't even have to think about it, and you want to offer free shipping, I mean, you got to think about how those unit economics really work. But so yeah, I mean, the gross margins haven't really changed. But if you figure out how to get your logistics better and right, it can make a huge impact as you scale.
Mm. And it looks like you have a lot of different SKUs and different colors per SKU. How did it look like to build from your first product to a full website? And what were your experience around minimum order quantity and how you would order for each new design and how you would stock them in the early days?
Yeah, I mean, that is, again, the $1 million question, that nobody seems to have truly answered. Because, on the one hand, you can argue, hey, I just have 6 SKUs and I focus on those and I know them really well and my client knows them really well. And we just mix and match them in a million different ways. And that helps us in order processing, helps us in inventory, helps us in streamlining, and helps us even with our customers because they know exactly what they're coming to us for. Um, on the flip side, some people have 30,000 SKUs and are like, yeah, of course we do. We need that. I mean, that allows us to offer up a lot of different mix and match and colors and sizes and body types, and allows us to really, I mean, whether if it's a pet thing, every type of dog or every type of dog size or every type age of the dog or whatever it is. I mean, it really allows us the ability to cater to so much. Um, I guess it would depend on who your partners are, as well in some ways, because if you're drop shipping or you have some sort of relationship with a manufacturer that is open to it. I mean, I get an email every day from somebody in China that wants to, that has a factory. And then I was just in Shenzhen, somewhat recently. And while there's some in Shenzhen, obviously your Shein and Temu's, and they're kind of figuring it out. There's quite a lot in China, that are looking for customers, and so there's opportunity there, and there's opportunity to even show it on your site and not even need to necessarily own it. Um, and it's not even. I mean, it might be drop ship in some ways, but it might be a relationship that you can develop, like a consignment type of thing. Um, but I would say, I mean, I've talked to some investment bankers, and I'm not like wasn't looking for investment necessarily, but just trying to get advice.
Mhm.
Um, and I talked to one specifically, that had invested in Food 52, and you could take a look at them. I mean, they're always an inspiration to us, and they also invested in Aura Ring and Surfline. I mean, they're called the Chierning Group, and I mean, they really focused on, I mean, Epic Gardener, which is another one in our space. And they really focused on, two to three things, right? I mean, one, and this is something that Bloomist absolutely has to work more on, Elsa, is it does unfortunately or fortunately have to be a personality, right? And even if that's your true, is that your true personality, or your one for your website? I don't know. Is Martha Stewart's personality your real one, or the one she, is like, is she the same in public as she is in private? I don't know. But I mean, if you could launch your site without developing a personality, I mean, God bless you. But for the most part, you need to kind of live the brand. I think that's number one. Number two, um, they really focused on content and content creation and your capability of making that content, because as I just mentioned, the cost of acquisition, especially if you use paid media, is so insanely exorbitant that you have to. The only way you could be profitable as a direct to consumer is defray that cost through building your own content and building your own viral messages. And as difficult as it may seem to cut through the TikTok or Facebook or Instagram algorithms, it's something that you unfortunately need to understand and do. I mean, I met at a conference a company that does katana swords, mini katana. And they said, oh, well, we have 9 million subscribers on YouTube. And I was like, damn. And then I just looked at them, and they now have 15 million. This is like 4 months ago, subscribers on YouTube. And all they do is like, they actually have large katanas now, and they have katanas that are, like, Dragon Slayer or, Naruto, whoever. I mean, like the ones that they had in the anime, like they imitate them, right? And she's very much they are very much on TikTok as well. I mean, they kind of do it because most of the ad platforms do not accept katana ads, because they're a weapon. So it's almost by default, that they just have to be really good at content. So she said to me, well, we did about 1,500 pieces of content last year, video content. All right. How many have you done, Elsa? Not 1,500.
I don't even do my own content because I'm not a social media person. So yeah, need to get better.
I mean, none of us are. We just need to
Yeah.
turn the camera around and push record. I mean, and I mean, you go to a conference and you'll see who's successful and who's not, and it'll boil down to that. And you don't know which one is going to do. I mean, that's the thing. People are like, well, I want a viral thing. Okay, you don't know which out of the 1,500 will go
Yeah.
viral. I mean, they started cutting up a skeleton on this katana thing, and now they've used the skeleton quite a lot. I followed them in the last 4 months, but they were like, yeah, I mean, the skeleton somehow, I mean, they just bought a skeleton randomly, they cut
Yeah.
it up, and then that just became a thing of theirs, you know? Um, so,
You just
so,
got
so
to
you don't
try
know what,
different things, and one
right,
might
right.
stick. Yeah.
Right. And you really don't know which one will click.
Mhm.
I mean, the other challenge, especially if you're kind of old school, which I am a little bit, I
Yeah.
mean, it's, and I know about this from, 10, 15 years of social media. You always got like really conscious about like, okay, it needs to just be more professional. You need to have your lighting right. You need to have your camera right, and over again, it's proven that you just don't. You just
Right.
don't, you know? Having said that, I mean, there's just also almost no excuse. I mean,
Mhm.
this is what I always tell interns and things like that. I mean, people who are learning about the space, there's so much resource out there.
Yeah.
Like you almost have no excuse not to buy the right camera, the right tripod, and the right microphone, right? I mean, there's like 50, you know, um, podcast and YouTube videos and pieces of content to tell you which is the right. And now we even have ChatGPT or Gemini, and you
Yeah.
could just ask Gemini, you know, consolidate all these 50 blogs and tell me what the right microphone is and that sort of thing. So unfortunately, we don't have even, we barely have an excuse for
Yeah.
that. But that's also the beauty of it, is that you can really, really learn in the space and find your footing. And I know we can't all learn everything, but try to learn something deeper.
Mhm.
I'm trying to learn fair better than anybody else. I'm trying to learn certain areas that I can optimize better. I've played with a lot of inventory management tools, which could be just a podcast on its own.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just how do you buy?
Mm.
I
Yes.
use
So,
different.
speaking of that, what inventory management tool would you recommend for those who are starting out with low quantities and trying to expand SKUs in the early days?
Yeah, I mean, there's one I've been testing out called Genie. I mean, and I was part of their beta to get it all launched, and I'm just really
Okay.
impressed with the folks. Um, app app.getgenie.io
Okay.
app.getgenie.io. I mean, I have a friend that works on Seventh Online, and they have a Seventh Online Lite version. I mean, they do Birkenstock and PVA, like
Mm.
Calvin Klein and just tons of others, but they actually built a light version. I have used Inventory Planner in the past, and it didn't work out that well. Shopify owns bought one that we were using already called Stocky, which is just kind of like a basic tool. But then, Excel works too.
Okay.
Like literally just downloading all of your what's been bought and going, okay, um, I need 2.5 months of this stuff, and then trying to understand what you need for the holidays. I
Mhm.
mean, we're in August. A lot of people, July, August, are thinking about what to buy because it takes 2, 3 months to get in, and you want to make sure you have it starting in October. And that'll really make your break your year. I mean, our Q4 has always been. I mean, you might think Bloomist. I mean, but still, we're
Mm.
twice what we are in Qs 1 through 3. So I you know
Mm.
I think it's critically important, because sometimes it's very, very difficult. It's definitely like Goldilocks: too much, too little, just right. I mean, if you have too little, you're definitely going to leave a lot of money on the table. But if you have too much and you bought too much, that
Yeah.
is also a huge nightmare. Where do you do with it? And it's very hard to liquidate. So and liquidate in a way that you want to make any money off of it. So it's very interesting, and like I said, I think I could probably do an entire podcast on that
Yes.
alone.
We need to
Yeah.
have you back. Unfortunately,
Okay.
we have 9 minutes remaining, so I want to end on a topic that entrepreneurs all love and hate, and we kind of alluded to, is what do we do with our marketing budget? And so for
Mm-hmm.
Bloomist, when you were starting out, what were the different marketing efforts that you did? There's so many. There's
Mm.
SEO, there's
Mm-mm.
PR, there's
Mm.
paid, there's social media. What did you do? What worked?
Yeah, that's a great question, isn't it? Because I was told, like, do a viral marketing campaign and you'll build an email list really fast. I was like, okay, makes sense. I mean, do a little giveaway, um, and that was kind of a nightmare. I mean, because we got like 20,000 email addresses, but literally nobody bought anything. So uh, don't go down that road. Um, the other thing, before I get into like what worked, I mean, I get an email every single day from somebody that says, I did 7x for this company, I did 20x for that company, I built that company up to, 8 figures within 3 months. Don't believe any of them. All right. I mean, it's just amazing who is out there. I mean, I guess almost should go on, no duh, but clearly people are falling for it because they continue to, send it to me. So what
Mm,
works? Um, I would say that depending on your product, but I mean, we did have some early success with influencers.
mm,
And I do hear over and over again, like TikTok influencers do work. Um, some of the issues is, you need to get your product into miniature, which I was just with a company that actually puts product into miniature. So let's say you do a hair product or a food product or a CPG of any sort. I know a guy here in LA who can actually put anything into a miniature version and then be able to get it out to 1,000 influencers to try. Now, I don't know if that works that well with our product because I mean, how do you do a miniature? I mean, we already have a mini, mini Monstera and stuff, but I mean, it's hard to get a mini of anything for us. But we'd probably think about like some of our lowest cost product, like a Palo Santo stick or something, and so people can get at least the flavor of what Bloomist is all about, right? And in particular, our influencers. And then they can get it and they can burn the Palo Santo. They can do, sort of a burning sage ceremony, something like that, and show how it works and show why they're doing it, and help us. And that's probably like two of our lowest priced products, the sage sticks or Palo Santo sticks or something like that, which are the things that we kind of used at the very beginning. But we had this one woman who bought our wood chains. So we have these salvaged wood chains that are kind of unique. That again, would work for selfies quite extensively during the pandemic. Well, we signed up for Share a Sale, and then we also
yeah.
signed up for what is now known as LTK,
Oh,
then known as
I just
Rural
signed up.
Style.
Yeah.
Okay,
How
all
is
right.
it? I heard it worked for some people.
Well, it used to work really well for us,
Mhm.
and then we found this one woman, or she found us, I guess I should say. I mean, one day our sales went from, I don't know what we were doing, maybe 1,000 a day to like $7,000 in one day,
Wow.
and all of them were this like wood chain that everybody was buying, and I was like, why? And I'm pretty sleuthy about this stuff. I mean, with GA and everything else, and I tracked it back to this influencer. And she had just posted one single story, and I even asked a customer, how did you find us? And I knew she had come from that influencer, and she goes, oh yeah, this her name's Molly. I literally just buy anything that Molly tells me to buy. I
Wow.
was like, I. So
Oh, Molly.
let me call Molly and see if I can get more of these in her hands and give her a discount code and stuff like that. I mean, I have a signed one from her now, just as a memento.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm, 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 mm. That's cool. Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, right. Mm, mm, mhm, mm, mm, mhm. Oh, I love that. Interesting. Yeah, yeah, mm, mm. Coming full circle. Coming full circle. Yeah. They should though, right? Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Oh yeah. 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 We use it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah. The Hermes of pet earns. Right. Yeah. These are okay, these are such good nuggets of wisdom. Speaking of influencer marketing, I have a call with one of my target influencers that I want to bring on board starting now. So we have to put this to a wrap. But this has been super helpful, Mike, and we must do a couple more just to talk about the other aspects. Yes, thank you, Mike.